Go ahead, Sean.
Let me just to North Korea actually, with Putin and Kim Jong Un meeting. I know there have been comments on that previously, but could you say particularly there's the Russians are talking about satellite cooperation? What would that mean? How much of a concern is that in terms of the implications for North Korea's program and for Russia's military?
I would say it is troubling when you see the Russians talking about cooperating with North Korea on programs that would violate UN Security Council resolutions that Russia itself voted for. Now, we obviously we haven't seen the full manifestation of this meeting yet, or what the full outcomes of this meeting will be. But when you see when you see Kim Jong-un vowing to provide full, unconditional support for Russia's so-called sacred fight to defend its security interests, which of course is not what it's doing with respect to the war in Ukraine. That of course is troubling. When you see what looks to be increased cooperation and probably military transfers, as we've said for some time, we have reason to believe they were going to discuss military transfers. That is quite troubling and would potentially be in violation of multiple UN Security Council resolutions.
You say potentially. I mean, one of the things that they're mentioning is on the satellite specifically. I know you said you don't have the full manifest of what's going there, but in terms of what, I mean, the United States has said that the satellite program that North Korea has is used to develop ballistic missiles.
Exactly.
Is that a concern that Russia could be actively promoting, improving the North Korean ballistic missile?
Absolutely. That's why that was what I was referring to in my reference to the multiple UN Security Council resolutions against North Korea's ballistic missile program, which Russia itself voted for and now could potentially be violating.
Just one more. I mean, just in terms of the consequences, I think Jake Sullivan himself has said that there's a potential for, not to put words into it, potential for sanctions, for further actions on this. What is the United States looking at? I mean, is there the potential for some action on the basis of this?
So we're going to watch very closely what comes out of this. I spoke to this somewhat the other day. We're looking at, I will say there are two different possibilities of weapons flowing two different ways here, right? With respect to either direction, we would watch very closely and be concerned and will not hesitate to impose sanctions if and when it's appropriate. And then I want to speak specifically for a second about the idea of North Korea providing weapons to Russia, which I spoke to the other day, but I don't think you were here. One, just the overall context. I think it's important to restate again that a year and a half ago, Vladimir Putin launched this war thinking he was going to restore the glory of the Russian Empire, failed in all of his maximalist imperialist aims, and now a year and a half later, after losing tens of thousands of Russian soldiers and spending billions and billions of dollars, here he is begging Kim Jong-un for help. So it says something about the overall context of how this war is going for Russia. And with respect to what any outcomes might be, we have taken a number of actions already to sanction entities that have brokered arms sales between North Korea and Russia, and we won't hesitate to impose additional actions if appropriate.
May I just follow up?
She raised her hand. Go ahead.
We'll
get to you, Saeed.
Has there been any interaction between U.S. officials and Chinese officials on this matter, given it would likely be a concern of Beijing if Russia were to provide nuclear technology to?
Not that I'm aware of. Not aware of any specific interaction. But the meeting just happened today, so I wouldn't rule it out. And we do have somewhat regular engagements with Chinese officials going forward. We have, I will say, the Secretary Blinken raised North Korea's nuclear program and North Korea's ballistic missile program in his engagements with Chinese officials when we were in Beijing, and we regularly raise that in our conversations with Chinese officials because of the close relationship that China has had with North Korea, that if they're willing to play a productive role, they're able to, and they have some influence with the regime in North Korea. So I would anticipate we would raise it, but I'm not aware of any specific interactions that have taken place
meet
yet.
with whoever the Chinese delegation leader is at UNGA next week?
I don't have any specific meetings to announce yet, but stay tuned over the course of the next couple of days. Janie, go ahead.
Thank you, Matt. Two questions on North Korea. North Korea launched the two ballistic missiles into the East Sea yesterday ahead of the North Korea-Russia summit. What do you think is the intention behind this?
So I won't speak to their intentions. always tough getting in the mind of that regime in particular, but I will say that the United States condemns the DPRK's recent ballistic missile launches, as we have condemned their previous ballistic missile launches. The launches are in violation of multiple United Nations Security Council resolutions and are the latest in the series of launches that pose a direct threat to the DPRK's neighbors. They undermine regional security, and our commitment to the defense of the Republic of Korea and Japan remain ironclad.
President Putin and the North Korean leader Kim Jong-un are further strengthening their military cooperation at the talks. How will the United States choose a diplomatic or military approach to resolve the North Korean nuclear and missile issues in the future?
We have always made clear that we are ready for diplomacy, are open to diplomacy, would welcome diplomacy with North Korea to address our concerns about its nuclear weapons program. And to date, as I believe you're well aware, they have shown no interest in such diplomacy.
So you still expect to dialogue with North Korea? Dialogue is still open.
Did you say I expected?
Yeah, expect.
I do not. I do not get based on their behavior over the last 2.5 years. No, I would not expect them to engage in diplomacy with us. Just based on how they've reacted for the first 2.5 years, over 2.5 years now of this administration. But the door always remains open from our side.
Thank you.